Something very real is taking shape behind the scenes as the 2026 NFL Draft approaches. And if you've been paying close attention to how this class is being evaluated internally, there's one position group that keeps standing out more than most people are talking about right now: the edge rushers. And here's the interesting part. The deeper you go into the evaluations, the clearer it becomes that this is not just a strong group. This might quietly be one of the most important position battles shaping how teams, including the Pittsburgh Steelers, approach their draft boards. When you look at how different evaluators are stacking this class, you immediately notice a pattern forming at the very top. Arvil Reese from Ohio State, David Bailey out of Texas Tech, and Ruben Bain from Miami consistently appear in that top tier. That's not sluchina. That tells you there's a consensus forming around a core group of elite talent. And in a draft where pass rush can change everything defensively, that matters a lot more than people realize. Now, let's break that down like we're sitting together watching tape. Reese is being viewed as a player with an incredibly high floor. There's confidence in what he already is, but the ceiling? That's where things get exciting. Bailey, on the other hand, is being talked about as possibly the most versatile of the group, someone who can step into a system immediately and produce. That kind of plug-and-play ability is exactly what front offices love, especially teams that feel they're close to contending. And then there's Bain, powerful, productive, but with questions like arm length that could influence where he ultimately lands. These are small details, but in the NFL draft, small details can shift a player by 10 picks or more. But here's where things really start to get interesting. Beyond that top tier, this class doesn't fall off. It expands. You're talking about a group that one evaluator described as having over 30 draftable prospects. That's massive. And it's not just numbers, it's variety. Defensive ends, outside linebackers, hybrid edge players. This is a class filled with different body types, different skill sets, and different fits depending on scheme. Take Malachi Lawrence from UCF, for example. He wasn't getting as much early attention, but after an impressive performance at the combine, including a 4.52 in the 40-yard dash, suddenly people are starting to look at him differently. That's how quickly perception can change at this stage. One workout, one moment, and now a sleeper becomes a name everyone is circling. And then you've got players like Jyshawn Barham, who bring positional versatility into the conversation. A guy who has played off the ball linebacker, but is now showing edge capabilities, including the ability to drop into coverage. That kind of flexibility is something modern defenses crave. It's no longer just about getting to the quarterback. It's about disguising pressure, adapting on the fly, and creating mismatches. At the same time, there are prospects raising concerns despite their talent. Keldrick Falk, for instance, has the size and run-stopping ability that teams love, but questions about his explosiveness and fit as a true edge rusher could impact how he's valued. Akeem Mesidor had a strong season, but age and injury history are factors teams cannot ignore. These are the kinds of internal debates happening in war rooms right now. And here's the bigger picture you need to understand. Like, when a draft class is this deep at edge rusher, it changes strategy. Teams don't feel forced to reach early because they know value might still be there in the second or even third round. But at the same time, if there's a guy they truly believe in at the top, they might get aggressive to secure him before the drop-off, even if that drop-off isn't as steep as usual. For a team like the Steelers, known for valuing defensive identity and pass rush, this kind of class presents both an opportunity and a challenge. Do you go early and lock in a difference maker, or do you trust the depth and address another need first, knowing you can still find impact later? Because make no mistake, there are players in this group who may not be household names right now, but could quickly become key contributors at the next level. Guys like Karen Crawford, who showed flashes of explosiveness and is still developing his pass rush arsenal, or Caden Curry, who quietly put together a highly productive season with double-digit sacks and tackles for loss. This is the kind of class where the right evaluation can make a front office look brilliant, or completely miss out on hidden talent. So now it comes down to this. With so much depth, so many different profiles, and so many variables in play, how do you think the Steelers should approach this edge class? Do they go after one of the top names early, or trust the depth and wait for value later in the draft? And this is exactly where things start to feel even more strategic, because once you accept that the depth of this edge class is real, the conversation shifts from who is the best player to when is the right moment to strike? And that's where front offices separate themselves. Think about it like this: if multiple evaluators are all saying the top 3 can be shuffled in any order, with names like Arvil Reese, David Bailey, and Ruben Bain consistently rotating depending on preference, that tells you there isn't a unanimous can't-miss prospect. And when that happens, teams start leaning heavily on fit, scheme, and long-term projection rather than just raw ranking. That's how you end up seeing surprises on draft night. Now add another layer to this. There are prospects outside that top tier who are gaining serious momentum late in the process. Malachi Lawrence is the perfect example. Production over multiple seasons, then backing it up with elite athletic testing. That combination forces teams to go back to the tape and reevaluate everything. Suddenly, a player who might have been a day 2 target starts creeping into late first-round conversations. And once one team buys in, it only takes one pick to change the entire board. At the same time, you have players like Danny Dennis Sutton, who quietly put together consistent production with back-to-back seasons of 8.5 sacks, while also impacting special teams in a way that most edge players simply don't. Or Gabe Jackass, who kept improving year after year and added playmaking ability with forced fumbles. These are the types of players that winning teams love. Not always flashy, but reliable, productive, and trending upward. And then there are the wild cards, players like R. Mason Thomas, who might not fit the traditional prototype, but are being talked about as potential immediate contributors. That's the kind of evaluation that tells you teams are looking beyond measurables and focusing on football instincts and effectiveness. Because at the end of the day, getting to the quarterback is what matters, not how pretty it looks on paper. Now, let's bring this back to Pittsburgh and really think about it from a Steelers perspective. This is an organization that has built its identity on defense for decades. From the steel curtain to more modern eras, pressure on the quarterback has always been a cornerstone. So when a class like this comes around, deep, versatile, and full of pass rush upside, it's not something they can ignore. But here's the dilemma. If you believe someone like David Bailey can step in on day 1 and contribute immediately because of his versatility, passing on that early might be risky. On the other hand, if the internal belief is that the gap between the top tier and the second wave isn't that significant, then the smarter move could be to address another premium need early and circle back to edge later. And don't forget, this draft being held in Pittsburgh adds another layer of pressure and opportunity. The spotlight will be on every decision, every pick will feel amplified. If there's ever a moment to make a bold move, this might be it. Because with over 30 draftable edge prospects, as some evaluations suggest, it's not just about finding a good player, it's about finding the right one. The one that fits your system, your culture, and your long-term vision. That's how championship defenses are built. And one more thing that can't be overlooked, effort and motor keep coming up in these evaluations. Whether it's players like Kayron Crawford, who brings explosiveness and energy, or others whose coaches rave about their work ethic, there's a clear emphasis on mentality. That matters in Pittsburgh more than almost anywhere else. Talent gets you noticed, but effort keeps you on the field. So now everything is lined up for a fascinating decision. A deep class, multiple tiers of talent, rising prospects, and a franchise that knows exactly what elite edge play looks like. If you're sitting in that draft room knowing all of this, do you take the safe route and trust the depth, or do you make a statement pick and go get your guy before anyone else can? And the more you sit with that question, the more you start to realize this isn't just about adding another edge rusher. It's about defining what kind of defense the Steelers want to be moving forward. Because when you look closely at this class, you're not just choosing between players, you're choosing between identities. Do you want explosiveness off the edge, like what you see in players who fire off the ball and immediately stress offensive tackles? Or do you prioritize length, strength, and discipline against the run, even if it means sacrificing that first step burst? That decision shapes everything. Take a step back and think about how different some of these prospects really are. You've got players who win with pure athleticism, bending the edge and closing fast. Then you've got others who are more technical, building their pass rush arsenal over time, relying on hands, leverage, and effort. And then there are hybrids, guys like Jyshawn Barham, who bring that linebacker background and give you flexibility to disguise looks and confuse quarterbacks. Each type brings value, but not every type fits every system. And this is where the Steelers' internal evaluations become critical, because when multiple voices around the league are saying this class will be drafted early and often, it creates urgency. Not panic, but urgency. You don't want to be the team that waits one round too long and watches your entire board get wiped out at the position you were targeting. At the same time, there's a calm confidence that comes with depth. Knowing there are still quality options later allows you to be patient, but only if your evaluations are strong, miss on your reads, and suddenly that depth doesn't help you at all. And let's talk about something that fans don't always see: projection versus production. There are players in this class who have already produced at a high level. Sacks, tackles for loss, forced fumbles, the numbers are there. But then there are others who might not have the same stats, yet evaluators see traits that could translate even better to the NFL. That's where teams take risks, that's where steals happen, and also where mistakes happen. For example, a player like Gabe Jacas showed steady growth year after year, increasing his sack production and making plays consistently. That kind of trajectory gives teams confidence. But then you look at someone like Malachi Lawrence, who combines production with elite athletic testing, and suddenly you're asking yourself, is his ceiling even higher than what we originally thought? These are not easy decisions, and they're happening right now, behind closed doors, with every detail being analyzed. Another factor that keeps coming up is effort, that non-stop motor. It's something that was specifically highlighted in multiple evaluations. Players who don't take plays off, who chase from the backside, who keep working even when they're blocked. That's the kind of trait that often separates good players from great ones at the next level. And in a city like Pittsburgh, that mentality isn't just appreciated, it's expected. So now imagine draft night. The board is moving, names are coming off faster than expected, and suddenly a decision has to be made. Do you stick to your plan, or do you react? Because if one team jumps earlier than expected on a player like David Bailey or Arvil Reese, it could trigger a run on edge rushers, and once that run starts, everything changes. Teams that were planning to wait might be forced to act. Teams that were confident in their options might suddenly feel pressure, and that's where preparation meets instinct. At the end of the day, this edge class isn't just deep, it's unpredictable. And unpredictability is what makes drafts unforgettable, because once that moment hits, everything we've been breaking down, all the rankings, all the projections, all the debates, it all condenses into a single decision that could shape the trajectory of this defense for years. And here's something that doesn't get talked about enough. When a class is this deep, it actually increases the pressure on getting the pick right. It sounds backwards, but it's true. When talent is everywhere, missing on your selection hurts even more, because the alternative options were